Let's unbox the Micro Galaxy Squadron Anakin's Naboo N-1 Starfighter. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. The Phantom Menace was released while I was a teenager, so the prequel era in general had a profound impact on my Star Wars fandom, and it's where my Star Wars collecting journey began. So I'm really fond of any item from the prequel era. So when the Micro Galaxy Squadron line, a line of collectibles I absolutely love, announced that they were going to be releasing a few Phantom Menace vehicles for the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, I knew I had to add them to my collection. I've already opened up the Gungan Bongo sub, absolutely fantastic, and I also have this one. I really enjoyed the way that it looked in the box, so I kept it boxed for just a little while longer, but I'm really keen to get it out and see it on display. Now, as you can see, this one has an only at Target sticker. This never arrived here in New Zealand, so I had to source it from the United States. My first shipment sadly got lost in the American postal system, and so I had to wait for a replacement to be sent, and so it took a little while to get here, so I really treasured it because it had a long journey to come here, but I think the time has finally come to open it up. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll take a closer look at the Naboo Starfighter out of the packaging and we'll check out all of the cool details, but first let's take one last look at the packaging. The Micro Galaxy Squadron line of vehicles does have different packaging depending on the class of vehicle, and this is the Starfighter class for the Naboo N-1 Starfighter. So we have a backing card with a clear plastic bubble here. Fantastic packaging for the style of vehicle, though I do have to say, for some of them, because of the constrained size, we do have some pieces that are removed for the sake of fitting them into the packaging. I really like the angle that the Naboo Starfighter is packaged here. We can see it tipped to the side, so we see a lot of surface details, but because of the size of this bubble, the tail section has sort of been cut off and removed, and it is actually tucked in here just behind this strip here at the front. So there is a little bit of construction that we have to go through. It is a little bit of a shame because if you do like to keep your Star Wars collectibles in their packaging, this one in particular looks a little bit cut off. I think it's going to look a lot better out of the packaging. We can see the insert picture here. It shows that we're going to be attaching that tail part into the main body of the craft to really fully assemble the vehicle. Now this one has some really cool extra details with it because we can see that this has the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace foil sticker here on the front, and usually down the side here we have a series note, series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. But this one is unique in that it is an episode 1 collection. We have a silver marker down the side here rather than a series. It's kind of outside of the standard series line. We still have the silver foil stripe across the front that reads Anakin's Naboo N-1 Starfighter. Quite a long name for this one. I expected this one to just say Naboo N-1 Starfighter. Interesting that they have marked it as being Anakin's, because we can see here that it does include a very small little Anakin Skywalker and R2-D2 minifigures, so I'm really keen to get those ones in the vehicle shortly. The front stripe also says that this one is number 150. It's kind of nice having a nice round number, something like 150 for a special anniversary release. Really quite nice there. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, this one has the only at Target sticker here on the front window. Of course, very rare for me to have any collectibles in my collection that actually have the sticker because of course this is US only. Even with Funko, if they are Target exclusives, we have different stickers for the Funko releases here in New Zealand, so I don't have many versions of the sticker, which is kind of unusual. So I'll probably be keeping this packaging just because of the unique stickers, especially this 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace one there. We can see that there's a lot of air around the vehicle, but I do like the angle that it is packaged at, so we can really see a lot of the top details there. It is a little hard to see, but I can just make out the end of the tail packaged in there behind this front insert. Well, the cardboard continues on. We've got the Star Wars logo here, wraps up a little bit around the side so we can see that there, but it's not really blocking the light in any way because we've got this nice big clear plastic version there. And we do have some really cool Starfighter battle art in behind the ship there. We've got droid fighters with a Trade Federation control ship here, of course, from the Battle of Naboo from the Phantom Menace. Really cool art. I like keeping the backing cards especially because of the artwork that they include on them. Moving on to the back, a little bit interesting here. We usually have a little bit of a lineup of other vehicles from the wave, but because this one is a unique Phantom Menace collection, there are no preview images of other ships released at the same time, even though the Gungan Naboo submarine, the Bongo submarine, was released at the same time as part of the Phantom Menace collection. It is not pictured here, so I think that that's kind of interesting there. So we can see the preview image here shows that the Anakin figure will fit into the cockpit. We've also got R2-D2 in his sort of droid hatch there, and we've got a little bit of an interesting way of getting R2-D2 into his hatch. On many vehicles in the Micro Galaxy Squadron line, like X-Wings, the droids fit in from the top down, but on this one we're going to have to insert R2-D2 from the underside, so that's quite different there. But something that we do have on most of the Micro Galaxy Squadron line is this really fun cut out and keep collectible blueprint card. If you don't have the space or the inclination to keep the packaging, you can just cut this one out as a nice little memento of the packaging there. I really like the artwork there. Reminds me of some of my old Star Wars blueprint books. And here we have a little bit of a hologram image here of the Naboo Starfighter, just so we can see some of the things. Looks like we've got a panel to remove here on one of the engines. That's kind of interesting. We also have a landing gear there to lower to, of course, put on the desk for display, because these ones don't come with stands. So generally the Micro Galaxy Squadron line have landing gear, a little bit different to some other toy product lines. We can see here that we also have the name Anakin's Naboo N-1 Starfighter class there. Of course, we've just got the Jazwares kind of copyright stuff here on the bottom, barcode and everything there on the underside. As I said earlier, I do like the way that this one looks in the box, even though the tail is cut off. Just something about the yellow and silver, really nostalgic for the Phantom Menace era. I was just enjoying seeing it in the packaging, but because it looks a little bit cut off, a little bit battle damaged as it were, I think this one's going to look really cool out of the packaging. So let's get stuck in and open it up. So now I have the Naboo N-1 Starfighter out of the packaging. Have to say that was actually quite a wrestling match getting it out of that clear plastic insert. It was really quite embedded in there. I had to be very careful because of these fine spins, but got it all out safe and sound. Very relieved about that. But of course, I'm really excited to take a look at the included minifigures. I like these little capsules. Nice little fun way to display them if you don't want to put them in the vehicle for any particular reason. There is a cardboard insert there that has the nameplate on it, Anakin Skywalker and R2-D2, and on the back it's kind of cute because they're so little. We've got a little blueprint image there of the figures. You can really see some of the detail that they put into these figures. The R2-D2s in particular, the astromechs, have some really cool tiny details. So let's pop these little minifigures out, and then I'll pop them aside, and then we'll get stuck into the actual Starfighter. I'm really excited about this one. Okay, so Anakin came out of the tray nice and easily. R2-D2, oh, he's just in there a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start with R2 because we've seen him a couple of times, because of course there is Luke Skywalker and his X-Wing, so we have R2 a few times, so of course a little bit more familiar with this one. A little bit simple in terms of paint job, but we're talking about a really tiny little figure here, so that is to be expected. Mostly white. We've got a nice silver dome here and blue details on the legs, one blue panel on the front, and a few blue details on the front, particularly around his eye. And I really like the fact that we've even got the separation between the blue panels around the dome. That's really tiny, those tiny little silver lines between the panels there. Really nice distinction, because of course once they're bedded into their sort of astromech port on a ship, the dome is what we're looking at. So it is the dome paint jobs that I'm really the most interested in. So I like to see that level of detail with those panels across the top. The back of it, not really much to see. We've just got that silver dome and all white, no other painted details. So most of the figures have a small peg there, because most of the vehicles that have an astromech, like an X-Wing, have a small little peg in the astromech port so that the figure beds down on it. So if you tip your ship upside down, it stays on and doesn't fall out. Now, of course, this one is very different. We're not going to have, I don't think, we're going to have the peg based on what I could see in there, but I think they've pretty much just used an existing mold, so it still has that peg. So I guess you could mix and match your astromechs if you want. You could put this R2-D2 somewhere else and perhaps mix and match and put a different astromech in this one. But yeah, really nice and tidy. A little bit big here on the blue square rectangle on the front, but of course it's going to be very hidden shortly. Moving on to the Anakin. This is really cute. Okay, so we've got him in his Tatooine sort of tunic here with a brown belt, painted hands, ones, but the most of the detail is of course around his Naboo Starfighter helmet here. We've got the brown helmet, little silver sort of ear cups, and black for the goggles, and a little bit of a design around the back there. Oh, and we've even got some little brown pouches there on the back. So much detail for such a small figure. Of course, we don't really have too much painting on the rest of the body. It is kind of just that beige plastic all over. Now, of course, to get him into a cockpit, we're going to have to get him into a cockpit mode. So these tiny figures, I'm being very careful with the articulation because he is very small, much smaller than the standard human ones, but the arms can go up so that they can sort of reach controls, and then we have articulation at the hips to get him into a seated position there. So he is all ready to go into the cockpit. But first I want to go over the vehicle, so I'm just going to put these little figures and the packaging aside, just like that. So now we can get stuck in and take a closer look at the vehicle, and this is really cool, getting your first sort of hands-on look. It's always a little bit different than just viewing it through the packaging. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a quick look around some of the details before I get the tail fin assembled. And I also have the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter from the same Micro Galaxy Squadron line to do a little bit of comparison to see how much there is in terms of similarities. Of course, his is heavily modified, but I'm just curious to see how they stack up beside each other. So this looks really nice. I love the yellow. It's interesting that it isn't a painted yellow. They've gone for a yellow plastic, so it kind of has an interesting sort of depth to it rather than sort of a more of a flat yellow that a paint would sometimes give there. So it's got a really nice sort of gloss finish to it there. And the silver looks really nice. It almost sort of looks like it's been dipped in silver, doesn't it? Really nice. We've got some really small red painted details, and we've even got some little black marks there, intentional black painted marks there, just behind the cockpit. And of course, we've got red ones here as well on the engines. Really nice. Cool. It is very light, I have to say, but it is a very thin vehicle. So I guess because I've been unboxing recently the Hot Wheels Starship Select, and those are die-cast metal, so I'm used to sort of a bit more of a heavier one. This one's quite light. Of course, we've got these really slender little fins here from behind the engines as well. Really nice. We can see this really interesting astromech port, which we've got sort of a little opening section here on the underside. Very different, of course. Just want to quickly grab the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter because I just want to see them side by side. I think this will be interesting. So of course the Mandalorian's one is heavily modified. We've got a lot of exposed parts there, but we can see the same shape there. Now the interesting thing, because this version of course has a permanently attached dome with a little Grogu figure. Now this dome cannot open. That Grogu figure is permanently inside. So very different to the astromech port of the original sort of Phantom Menace Naboo Starfighter. And of course we don't have a port here on the underside. We have the sort of extra booster engine that the Mandalorian has on his ship. And this tail looks quite long, and these fins look more sort of slender and in length than the original one. So I just wanted to sort of take a quick look at these as close up as I can, just before I get the tail fin on that one. Just want to sort of do a bit of a comparison. That looks a lot longer, doesn't it? As best as I can to sort of line up those engines. They're a little bit of a different shape, but the Mandalorian's fin there is a lot longer. That's interesting. So I wonder if the tail's different as well. So just while I've got this one attached, I can sort of see the attachment point. His tail one is a little bit longer as well. You can just see there if I line up that sort of attachment point. His is just a little bit longer there in the tail. So I guess they're kind of giving it a long, sleek sort of speed, you know, sort of designed for speed. It's all just a little bit elongated there. But I get the feeling that for the most part, I don't know if they've exactly used the same molds, because there's a lot of cutouts and engines and sort of parts like this section here at the front. We've obviously got these sort of extra weaponry attached to the front. But on the whole, this does look very similar in shape and design. So they might have started with the same mold and then sort of deviated there. I kind of wonder sometimes when they are designing a ship like this, whether they are sort of basically making the original version first, but they released this one and then kind of released this one later to tie in with the anniversary, of course. The Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter, really cool ship, really popular. I just thought it would be interesting just to see these side by side. I'll take a look at both of them together once I get this one all kitted out. So let's quickly get get this one assembled now. It's just a little bit easier to hold when it doesn't have this full thing there. So we can see that the attachment point has a little bit of a notch there. So I get the feeling that once this is in place, it's not coming out again. So hopefully this isn't going to be too hard. We've got a bit of a triangular shape there. And of course, silver on the underside, yellow on the top. So it's easy to see which way round this is going to go. So, oh, that was nice. That's a nice click, and that's very sturdy. Now, the all-important test, does it look straight? That looks pretty good. I kind of wanted it to look like I couldn't see the seam once it's all fully attached, because it's not really supposed to detach. It's not a function of the Starfighter just because this box size wouldn't fit it. And I do understand, you know, this is just a long, tiny little piece of plastic. It doesn't really need a whole box around this section as well. So I understand for sort of packaging reasons why that would be cut off. But I like the fact that I can't even really see that join. There's a sculpting line there, but there's also a sculpting line here as well, and to my eyes I'm almost like not remembering which one I just inserted. I think it's just because there's a little cut here, but that's really nice and straight. I'm always a little bit worried when it comes to assembling pieces that, because it's two separate pieces that haven't exactly been tested in the factory, that they might not align straight. But that looks really nice. I'm really glad that that went together so well. So I can't even sort of really see the seam. Fantastic. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the details, then we'll take a look at the landing gear, the cockpit, and of course getting R2-D2 into his little port there. So there are just a few little bits of paint sort of wobbles. Now generally, if I can, I like to look at my Star Wars collectibles in person at my local toy store just to check to see if there's any paint flaws, because of course it's always a little bit of a shame. Now this one, the most thing, of course, this is yellow plastic, so we're not really going to have anything too much to worry about here. It is the silver across the nose here around the front that I'm the most interested in. And there is a tiny little sort of little bit of an abrasion across the front. It's mostly this little patch here. So it's not like a true sort of chromed one. It's almost like a little bit of some of this sort of weathering has kind of just been sort of slightly brushed over this surface here. It's really, really minimal. I'm looking at it really up close with good lighting. I'm probably not really going to notice it once it's on display, but that's kind of part of the thing of really going over in depth when I first open them up. I like to look at everything really up close. I do like this black sort of carbon scoring, as it were, coming back from sort of the laser cannon sort of weaponry part there. It's a really good sort of transition over the silver onto the yellow. So it just looks seamless, like that is, you know, happened from space battles and things like that. I really like that. The rest of the silver does look pretty good, even sort of on the tips of the engines. Everything looks pretty good. I don't see too much else there, really. Of course, you can see the shine of the silver on the underside. It pretty much the whole underside of the body, and just a little bit left uncovered by silver on the underside of the wings and the engines there. But really nice and tidy silver. Just a little bit of a shame about those little nose marks there. But of course, I had to order this one online. I couldn't see it before I bought it. But I have unfortunately seen worse when it comes to paint jobs on the Micro Galaxy Squadron line. So for this, very, very minor, I'm perfectly happy with that. That's fine. I don't mind that at all. I think it's interesting, the match in yellow here, because of course the cockpit is made out of clear plastic, which means that the sort of border edges to it and the lever sort of attachment point, because we're going to be able to open the cockpit, is a painted yellow. So we have paint along this section here where we're going to hinge, and then around the edges of the clear cockpit. And that yellow is a really, really good match, which is of course really important. We don't want it looking different, particularly from the side. It almost didn't catch my eye. That looks like the same color, but of course I can just sort of see the edges there, and this section is painted because of course it all has to be made out of clear plastic. So that's really nice to see. Good match in plastic there, so it's not catching my eye. It just blends in really nice. I like those little sort of like the little kill counter sort of thing there with the little emblems of black designs there as well. And those really tiny little red, I think they'll probably be decals. They're very, very tidy, looking like sort of digital printing or some kind of application there. Really nice, cool. So I'm so excited just to see this in person. You know, I ordered this online so many months ago. It had a bit of an adventure finally getting to me. So when you've had to wait for something for so long, it's just really, really exciting when you finally get it, you know, arriving on your doorstep and then in your hands. And I love the Phantom Menace and the prequel era. And there was just something about the Naboo ships in particular. Their sleek design was just so unique and different. And I really love this one. I remember this yellow one. The Hasbro one that I had was just absolutely so exciting when I finally got my hands on that Phantom Menace vehicle. I've still got it hanging in my action figure room. I absolutely love it. And it's really fun to see it being sort of released in a modern action toy collectible line like the Micro Galaxy Squadron. This is just really cool. I love the yellow. The silver's really cool. And we've even got sort of a really nice black sort of a fading effect here from the back of the engines. Looking at them dead straight, it's a little bit hard to show. There is a green line in there, which is really interesting. A little sort of a green edging on both of the engines there. You can see that. Now looking at it from this angle, I can just see we've got a little bit of a paint scratch on the black there on the inside. Thankfully that's on the inside of that sort of engine section there. So if I'm looking at it from regular angles, I don't see it, but that is a little bit of a shame. You can kind of see the yellow showing through there on that small scratch. I don't see anything on this side. So maybe I'll display it with this side so it's on the inside, so I'm not going to be able to see that once it's on display. But looking at everything really close up, of course. So let's start opening up some of these sort of elements like the landing gear. So the box showed one landing gear, but there are 3 on this particular ship. We've got 1 on each of the engines and 1 large one here. So sometimes these can be really stiff. They always do have a little bit of a lever to get your, oh, that one is moving as I speak. So hopefully this will be easy to get out. You can see the sculpting there. Something I love about the Micro Galaxy Squadron line, if anything opens, there is sculpting underneath it. They don't skimp on that. So you can see we've kind of got some in-world sculpting going on the underside there. We've got a lot of sculpting here on the sort of the leg there, textured, really nice. Okay, that one was nice and easy. So let's check out, oh, the engine ones are going to go the other way. Bit stiffer, and we've got some yellow and some silver on that. That one has a big click. We can see the foot of that one is yellow, and we've got a really shiny silver there. It's like shinier than the engine. It's kind of interesting. It's got a really sort of, I know the detail is really going to catch the light as well, because it's more textured than the sort of the soft smooth surface here. So it's really catching the light. That's quite fun. So let's get the other one out. That one was easier, thank goodness. Okay, I'm always a little bit worried about that. I have, on one occasion, had a Micro Galaxy Squadron vehicle where the landing gear were basically glued in. I could not get them out, and unfortunately I had to return it. There's no returning when you buy from the States. It's just too far. So very relieved, because now I've got this all assembled and we can get it in a landed gear. Because of course, most of the vehicles in the Micro Galaxy Squadron line don't come with flight stands or display stands. So if you're going to put them down rather than being hung on, say, fishing line or nylon line, or sort of in a flight mode, you're going to have to want them in sort of a landed position. So we need landing gear, which is just kind of fun. You can kind of see all sort of like a really large hangar bay of all your vehicles lined up, but we do lose a little bit of sort of the cool in-flight momentum, especially with some ships that have a very different style when landed versus flight, say like the Imperial Shuttle or the B-Wing. Unfortunately, you know, they look very different when they're in flight. This one, very minimal, but I like that we've got landing gear rather than just resting it on its body. Though, of course, you could actually kind of just rest it on its body, like when Anakin sort of flies/crashes it into the Trade Federation control ship. He kind of slides it across the surface there. So you could say, because this is Anakin's one, you could actually have it resting on the engine and say that's part of the scene. It's in world. I do like the fact that it does actually have proper landing gear, so it looks proper. Perhaps this is when it is in the hangar bay on Naboo, you know, ready for Anakin to climb inside there. So this looks cool. Let's get the minifigures in now. So I've got my little R2-D2 and Anakin Skywalker. I'm going to try, let's go with R2-D2 first. So I'm probably going to have to move this. Thankfully, it's not too hard, because when it's fully extended, it's kind of in the way of this sort of little cockpit here, because R2's sort of shoulders from his legs aren't really going to fit down into this one. We usually have sort of little cutouts on some of the other ships where they fit in, but he's too wide to fit into that. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to work from the underside. It's quite a unique design. So nice and easy to open. There we go, and we can see all the way through. So that's going to be really interesting. That looks like his shoulders are going to rest side to side there. I can kind of see a little bit of a cutout there. So let's just see how he goes in. I get the feeling, okay, he just kind of drops in there. So you can see his feet. Let's snap that closed so he doesn't fall out. And then we have R2 facing to the side. He looks really cute. I like that dome. He's in there nice and snug. And of course, because his shoulders are sort of being held in there, he's not going to fall out. So that looks really cool. So cute. Now the ship kind of looks complete. And then when we get that landing gear back, it doesn't quite touch that little section there. So it's not gonna, it kind of stops this from falling away, but it's not completely touching. But that's just kind of a nice little safety catch there. So let's get Anakin in and let's check out the cockpit as well, because there's usually some really cool sculpted detail. Okay, a little bit stiffer on the cockpit here. Let's, there we go. Okay, because there is a little bit of a lever to get your fingers into, but you can see the catches here on the underside, so it is pretty secure. They want to make sure that we don't accidentally fling open our cockpits and lose our figures. So you can see the clear cockpit with the painted edges there, and then we can see the internals there. Some really nice details. Now, this looks like it's all, this looks like this is grey plastic. This looks like it is painted plastic, I think, because I would imagine that this is mostly all made out of this yellow plastic, and this part here is painted, but the back seats look, I don't know if it's painted as well. Very hard to tell, but it looks really cool. I love the detail because we see a lot of Anakin's sort of cockpit controls on both his pod racer and this Starfighter in the movies. I like the fact that we can sort of see all of those circular displays in there. Really nice. That's cool. We've got a tiny little peg to go between his legs to help him keep in position so he doesn't kind of rattle around too much. So hopefully he's going to fit in there. I generally have a little bit more of a job getting in the larger figures in there. Like Wrecker from the Bad Batch, he's larger than a standard human, so sometimes he can be a little bit hard to get into vehicles. So hopefully that little peg section there is not going to stop us from getting Anakin into place. Okay. Oh, it kind of grips on, but that wasn't too hard at all. So now I can put his arms down a little bit like he's holding onto the controls. He looks really good, and even without the cockpit open, he's not going to come out, which is nice. So hopefully he looks good when we snap that closed. Nice. I like how clear that is. You can see him in there. Really nice. And that clip did a very good job of sort of guide him into the correct position, which is good. Sometimes those pegs, they can really help keep figures in position, but they can be really fiddly when you're dealing with grown-up sized fingers, trying to get figures, these tiny little figures into place. Sometimes I feel like I need to get some tweezers out to get them into position, but I'm glad he went in there without too much trouble, and he looks great. I can see him. He looks like he's holding on to the controls, and R2 looks really cute there. This looks great. I've got it fully kitted out. Now, there was one other detail that I thought was kind of interesting that was on the back of the packaging, and it showed that there was a panel that came off the engines to sort of reveal the inside. So this side, we can see there has a little bit of sort of a notch here that is not present on this side. This side's completely smooth, and then this engine has this notch. So let's see. Okay, we've got a panel that comes off. So we've got this just section that comes off, which I thought was kind of clever. Didn't actually really see the sort of width difference. Sometimes if something can move, you can really see the size difference, but there's just that small little notch that we can take off that panel and reveal the engine inside. So not really sure that this is a necessary feature. It's not like I'm really going to display it like this, but I get it's kind of a fun little feature showing the internals there. It's painted in a nice dark metallic silver. It looks fairly tidy overall, but yeah, just a little bit of an interesting sort of detail there. And yeah, I'm not quite sure why we necessarily need that. I know a lot of Star Wars ships do feature sort of battle damage. We see them sort of getting, you know, battle damaged in battle. I'm a bit worried about how to get this back on. I'm hoping it might just click on, because there's a little bit of a, oh, there's a little bit of a ridge right there at the front, but that's a tight fit to get that back on. I'm hoping maybe that's going to be a little bit more of a job to get it back on. There's a little tiny lip here right at the front that is quite tricky to actually line up. I'm going to have to, there we go. Pressing firmly gets it back on. But I was quite impressed with how sort of seamless this looks. Just that really small seam, which is pretty much the same as the other side. So I thought that that was actually kind of clever how well they did that sort of extra feature without making this look big and chunky. We just have that one sort of little ridge there so that we can catch it and pull it off. But fun little feature. I'm probably not going to be utilizing that for my display. And if I display it this side, for me personally, that's going to make this little paint floor just a little bit more visible. So for me, I'm going to be putting it this way. That's why I decided to put R2-D2 in with his face, with his head facing this way, so that when I've got him fully on display, he's going to look cool. I can see Anakin and I can see R2-D2. So cool. Okay, let's just do a quick little side by side with the Mandalorian's N-1 Starfighter, just to kind of see the two of them side by side, because of course, same base model, very different in terms of finish. So from my earlier comparison, they look to be pretty much the same. I can see the same sort of landing gear design, all of that kind of stuff, and just different in the areas that are very obviously different, like the little dome there. The fins are very different, all of the engine cutouts. It's really quite intricate, the detail on this one. Really quite cool, that kind of souped up hot rod style that makes it just such a fantastic design for Din Djarin to fly around since the loss of his beloved Razor Crest. So really cool. I'm probably not going to display these two side by side in terms of my display. I'm probably going to have this more with sort of prequel era ones, and I'll have this one in sort of a slightly different version, like next to the Razor Crest and things like that. But it's just fun for now just to see them side by side, because, you know, they are the base sort of model. But I don't know if I have a favorite, to be honest. I'm very, very sentimental about the Phantom Menace era, just because of how it was just so integral to the starting of my Star Wars collecting journey. The prequel era sort of dominated my teenage years and the start of my collecting journey. I tried to collect up as much as I could from the Phantom Menace and beyond. So this is really fun. Took a while to get here, but I was determined to have this one in particular in my collection. Especially, I am a big fan of Queen Amidala, Padme Amidala. So anything that has a kind of a direct or indirect connection to her. So things from Naboo, things from the prequels. Padme does actually fly one of these in episode 2. So, of course, it's the ship designs from Naboo are quite special to me. So even though Padme is not in this one, maybe because this one was named as Anakin's Naboo N-1 Starfighter, maybe we'll finally see one with like a Padme figure in it. Maybe they'll release it as a chase, and I'll have to chase that one down. Who knows? I wouldn't actually mind, because I'd love to see a Padme in her episode 2 fighter sort of disguise that she has at the start of that film. That would be really fun, because I thought it was interesting that they called this one Anakin's. Obviously they have to put a specific character in it. They didn't just give us sort of Naboo pilot or anything like that. So that's another variation that we might get further down the line. Easy for them to do. Maybe we could get one with a bit of blaster damage or something like that, and a Naboo pilot in there. That would be fun, because this is one where we generally see them, you know, in mass. We see them in sort of squadrons. We see a lot of them in the Phantom Menace. So I would kind of like to have a few lined up. And they have done quite a lot of releases of sort of other squadron vehicles like X-Wing. So for me personally, as a big prequel fan and collector, I would love to see them release more of this, because this one is specifically Anakin and R2-D2, I'm not really going to army build this one. And it was hard to get being a Target exclusive, so a little bit more expensive to army build as well. So maybe we'll see more. And I really hope to see more prequel ships. I'm especially hoping for Anakin and Zam Wesell's speeders. I think those would be really fun, just a little bit sort of bigger. I think there's just so many ships that I'm really nostalgic about from the prequel era. But this one's got to be right up there as one of my most nostalgic ones. I'm so excited to finally have this one in one of my favorite Star Wars vehicle toy lines, and I think it looks really cool. Everything clicked together. I'm really just so happy that that tail fin is just so nice and straight, and it clicked in there really nice. That was going to be a really big eyesore if that went in and it ended up being just a little bit crooked or something like that, just because the sleek line is so integral to the overall design of this particular Starfighter. So I'm really happy that that is just nice and sharp. Again, here, really fantastic. I'm so happy. I can't wait to put this one on display. It looks really, really cool. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible, checked out all of the cool details, and had just a lot of fun today. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Micro Galaxy Squadron fan, I recently unboxed the Gungan Bongo submarine. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Micro Galaxy Squadron unboxing playlist. This is the way.